Swedish American Line. Swedish American Line Swedish. Svenska Amerika Linien, abbr, SAL was a Swedish passenger shipping line. It was founded in December 1914 under the name Rederiaktiebolaget Sverige-Nordamerika and began ocean liner service from Gothenburg to New York. In 1925, the company changed its name to Svenska Amerika Linien / Swedish American Line. The Swedish American Line was amongst the first companies to build liners with provisions for off-season cruising, as well as the world's first company to build a diesel-engined transatlantic liner. Increased operational costs and stronger competition from aeroplanes forced the company to abandon passenger traffic in 1975, but cargo operations continued until the 1980s. History: 1915–1924. Rederiaktiebolaget Sverige-Nordamerika, literally, Shipping Corporation Sweden North America, was born from the idea of Wilhelm R. Lundgren, the owner of Rederiaktiebolaget Transatlantic, with the purpose of offering ocean liner service from Sweden to North America. Both Norway and Denmark already operated their own transatlantic liners, and the establishing of a Swedish company for the trade was a matter of national pride. Lundgren died in September 1914, but his successor Gunnar Carlsson managed to attract the attention of Dan Brostrom of the Brostrom concern, and on 4 December 1914, the new Rederiaktiebolaget Sverige-Nordamerika was founded in Gothenburg. The Brostrom concern had already operated freighters across the North Atlantic since 1911 under the name of Swedish American Mexico Line, often abbreviated SAML. Originally, the new company had planned to commission two purpose-built 18,000-ton ships, but this plan was never realized. Instead, in September 1915, the company acquired the 1900-built Holland America Line vessel SS Potsdam, which was renamed SS Stockholm. On 11 December 1915, in the midst of World War I, the Stockholm left on her first crossing from Gothenburg to New York. En route, she was stopped by a British naval vessel and forced to make a stop at Kirkwall, where all mail on board was confiscated. In the end, the Stockholm's first transatlantic crossing took no less than 1 days. Initially, the new company concentrated on immigrant trade, with substantial provision made for passengers traveling in steerage. Despite the difficulties caused by the war, the Stockholm continued transatlantic services until 1917, when Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare forced her to be laid up in Gothenburg until June 1918, when she resumed service. In February 1920, abbr Sverige-Nordamerika acquired a second ship, the former Allen Line vessel SS Virginian, from Canadian Pacific Steamships. The ship had most recently been used as a troopship by the British Admiralty. She was renamed SS Drottningholm and entered service for her new owners on 30 May 1920. In 1922–1923, the Drottningholm was refurbished, re-engined, and her superstructure enlarged. As a partial replacement, the 1902-built SS Nordam was chartered from Holland America Line as SS Kungsholm from 27 February 1923 until 18 December 1924. In April 1924, the company acquired SS Borgholm, a small coastal steamer that became the first in a series of feeder ships used to transport passengers from ports around the Baltic Sea to Gothenburg. 1924–1939. In March 1923, abbr Sverige-Nordamerika placed an order for their first new building, the first MS Gripsholm, with Armstrong Whitworth & Co. in Newcastle upon Tyne. She was the first diesel-engined liner to be built for the transatlantic service. The Gripsholm was launched and christened on 26 November 1924 and delivered on 7 November 1925. On the same date, her owners officially changed their name to Svenska Amerika Linien / Swedish American Line, and on 21 November the Gripsholm set out on her maiden voyage from Gothenburg to New York. Encouraged by the success of the Gripsholm, SAL placed an order for a ship of similar but larger design with the Blohm and Voss shipyard in Hamburg on 28 October 1926. In 1927, the company decided to enter the cruise market, offering various cruises during the Northern Hemisphere winter season. On 17 March 1928, the new MS Kungsholm was launched at Blohm and Voss. The Kungsholm's interiors were designed with off-season cruising in mind, with her passenger capacity shrunk from 1344 on liner service to around 600 for cruising. She was also one of the first liners with interior decorations in Art Deco style, following the lead of the SS Isle-de-France built in 1927. The ship was delivered to SAL on 13 October 1928 and left on her maiden voyage on 24 November 1928. Coinciding with the delivery of the new ship, the first SS Stockholm was sold to Norwegian interests for conversion to a whale factory ship, SS Solvent. With the Gripsholm and Kungsholm, the SAL gained popularity with West European and American passengers, both in liner and cruise service. In May 1929, the United States and Canada imposed extensive restrictions on immigration. At some point after the delivery of the Kungsholm, SAL decided to abandon the traditional black hull color and their entire fleet was repainted with white hulls. The Swedish American Line continued operations with the Drottningholm, Gripsholm, and Kungsholm throughout the 1930s. In November 1936, the company placed an order for a new ship, MS Stockholm, with Cantieri Riuniti dell'Adriatico, Monfalcone, Italy. The planned delivery date for the ship was in March 1939, but she was destroyed by a fire during the final stages of construction on 19 December 1938. Construction of a second ship based on the same design, also named MS Stockholm, began soon after the destruction of the original. 1939–1946. Due to World War II breaking out in Europe, the Kungsholm made her last transatlantic crossing in October 1939, after which she was used for cruising around the West Indies until 1941. Also due to the war, the Gripsholm and Drottningholm were taken out of service and are laid up on 24 November 1939 and March 1940, respectively. Meanwhile, the construction work continued on the third Stockholm in Italy, and she was launched on 10 March 1940. In October 1941, the ship was ready for delivery, but due to the war, SAL had no service to place her on. As a result, the ship was sold to the Italian government on 3 November 1941 and converted to the troopship MS Sabaudia. The Sabaudia eventually sunk outside Trieste on 6 July 1944. Had the Stockholm ever entered service for SAL, she would have been the largest ship ever operated by the company. In December 1941, the U.S. government confiscated the Kungsholm while she was in New York. After negotiations with the Swedish American Line, the company agreed to sell the ship to the War Shipping Administration WSA for $6 million, which renamed the ship John Erickson for operation under WSA contract by United States Lines with Allah. The Drottningholm, meanwhile, was chartered by the U.S. government for March 1942 for use as a repatriation vessel to exchange official personnel between the United States and the Axis powers. As Sweden was a neutral country during the war, the Swedish-flagged ship could be used to transport passengers between the warring nations under the command of Sea Captain John Nordlander. The Drottningholm made 2 exchange trips for the U.S. government, after which she was chartered for similar use by the British government. In June 1942, the Gripsholm was also chartered to the U.S. government for the same use as the Drottningholm. For this purpose, the Gripsholm was managed by the American Export Lines but kept her original Swedish crew and flag. Unlike the Drottningholm, the Gripsholm was chartered to the U.S. government until 1946. Together, the Drottningholm and Gripsholm made a total of 33 repatriation voyages during the war. In October 1944, before the end of World War II, SAL placed an order with the Gothenburg shipyard in Gothenburg for a cargo/passenger liner of 12,000 165 gross registered tons GRT. 1946–1951. In March 1946, the Swedish American Line recommenced commercial service, with the Drottningholm setting on her first post-war crossing from Gothenburg on 26 March 1946, while the Gripsholm set out on her corresponding crossing from New York on 31 March 1946. On 9 September 1946, the company's newest ship was launched at the Gothenburg shipyard and named MS Stockholm. The new Stockholm was the product of an entirely different thinking from her two predecessors with the same name. Instead of offering luxurious surroundings, the new ship was to offer cheap transportation for the masses with austere interiors, despite the protests from the company's chief executive and stateside offices. During the same year, the Swedish American Line founded Home Lines together with Kosulich Lines and the Greek businessman Eugen Eugenides. Additionally, the operations of Swedish American Mexico Line were merged into those of the Swedish American Line in 1946, bringing 5 cargo-carrying ships to the fleet of SAL. On 18 July 1947, Swedish American Line bought back the USS John Ericsson from the U.S. Navy and restored her to her original name. The ship sailed to the Ansaldo shipyard in Genoa, where she was rebuilt for service with Home Lines under the name MS Italia. On 7 February 1948, the new Stockholm was delivered to SAL. She set out on her maiden voyage from Gothenburg to New York on 21 February 1948. When the Stockholm entered service, the Drottningholm was transferred to South Atlantic Lines, a subsidiary of SAL, and renamed SS Brazil for traffic with Home Lines. Between 18 December 1949 and 14 February 1950, the Gripsholm was rebuilt at Howaldswork, Kiel, with amongst others new funnels, a new bow, and modern navigational equipment. In March 1950, the company placed an order for a new combined cruise ship/ocean liner with De Schelde shipyard at Vlissingen, Netherlands. On 18 January 1951, the Swedish American Line recommenced cruise service for the first time since 1941, when the Stockholm embarked on a cruise to the West Indies. 1952–1962. The new ship under construction at De Schelde was launched on 18 October 1952 and named MS Kungsholm, becoming the third SAL ship to bear the name. The new Kungsholm was delivered on 30 September 1953 and set out on her maiden voyage from Gothenburg on 24 November 1953. Following the Kungsholm's delivery, the Stockholm was rebuilt with larger passenger accommodations. Coinciding with the completion of the Stockholm's refit, the aging Gripsholm was sold to the North German Lloyd, becoming their MS Berlin. On 14 September 1954, SAL ordered another new ship, essentially an enlarged version of the most recent Kungsholm from the Ansaldo shipyard. The new ship was named MS Gripsholm, the second ship to bear that name in the SAL fleet, and launched on 8 April 1956. On 25 July 1956, the Stockholm collided with the SS Andrea Doria outside Nantucket in one of the most famous maritime disasters of the 20th century. 47 people on the Andrea Doria were lost, while 5 members of the Stockholm's crew were lost in the collision. Several of the Andrea Doria's passengers were rescued by the Stockholm. She was able to return to New York under her own power, and was subsequently repaired at Bethlehem Steel, returning to service on 5 November 1956. On 14 May 1957, the new Gripsholm started on her maiden voyage from Gothenburg to New York. For the next 3 years, the company operated with 3 ships. In May 1959, the Stockholm was sold to VB Deutsche Reederei, East Germany, with a delivery date on 3 January 1960, becoming their MS Bulkerfjundschaft. 1963–1975. On 23 August 1963, the Swedish American Line ordered another new ship, this time from John Brown and Company, Clydebank. The new ship, named MS Kungsholm, the fourth SAL ship with that name, was launched on 14 April 1964. Her design featured several cruise-friendly innovations, including all-outside cabins and large lido decks. In preparation for the delivery of the new Kungsholm, the old third Kungsholm was sold to North German Lloyd on 5 October 1965, becoming their third MS Europa. The SAL operated with just one passenger-carrying ship until 24 April 1966, when the fourth and final Kungsholm was delivered. She began service with a transatlantic crossing from Gothenburg to New York, after which she was used for cruising around the world. In 1966, SAL ships made only 9 transatlantic crossings. In 1965, SAL had founded Hoverloyd together with Swedish Lloyd to offer a fast hovercraft connection across the English Channel. Hoverloyd began operations in 1966 with 2 hovercraft, Swift and Sure. Another joint operation was formed in the mid-60s when SAL, Rederiaktiebolaget Transatlantic and Wallenius Rederiet founded Atlantic Container Line as a joint marketing entity for transatlantic freight operations. Sometime later, the decision was made to establish a new company, Swedish Atlantic Line AB Svenska Atlantic Linien, for Swedish American Line's freight operations. In the early 70s, another joint company, Atlantic Gulf Services, was founded, this time in collaboration with Finnlines. In 1970, SAL passenger ships made only 3 transatlantic crossings, and from 1971 onwards the only crossings made were repositioning cruises. In June 1972, the Swedish American Line purchased the expedition cruise ship MS Line.The Explorer via their Panama-based subsidiary United Cruising Company. Unlike other SAL passenger vessels, the Line.The Explorer was registered in Panama, not Sweden. Increased operational costs of Swedish-flagged ships forced the company to start negotiations with Swedish trade unions for reflagging the Gripsholm and Kungsholm. The negotiations failed, however, and 22 March 1975 the company decided to abandon passenger traffic despite protests from the company's United States offices, according to whom the ships would have continued to be highly profitable even under the Swedish flag. The Gripsholm and Kungsholm were taken out of service and laid up in August 1975. The Kungsholm was sold to Flagship Cruises in October of the same year for only 65 million Swedish krona, a half of what SAL had paid for her 9 years earlier. Flagship maintained her under the name Kungsholm for cruising under Liberian flag. The Gripsholm found a buyer in November when she was sold to carry Georgi's Lines Greece, becoming their MS Navarino. The Line.The Explorer, however, stayed under SAL ownership. At the end of 1975, SAL withdrew from Atlantic Gulf services. 1975 onwards, SAL continued freight operations, maintained their share in Hoverloyd and ownership of the Line.The Explorer until the early 1980s. The Line.The Explorer was sold to Line.The Swire Cruises in 1980, and soon afterwards SAL withdrew from Hoverloyd. Apparently the last ship owned by the company was sold in 1986. In 1984 the company was bought by competing ship owner Rederi AB Transatlantic, which in turn was bought by transportation company Bilspedition AB in 1988. The last vestiges of SAL disappeared in 1990 when Bilspedition closed down its shipping department. Ships. Lists sourced from passenger ships, cargo ships,